Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into Norse mythology, but maybe not in the way you'd expect. We're going to look at Yggdrasil, the great world tree, not as this symbol of eternal strength, but as a blueprint for a universe that was actually designed to fail. Okay, let's just jump right in by questioning something we kind of take for granted with a lot of mythologies, this idea of a perfect, golden age or a flawless creation that somehow went wrong. The Norse worldview, it starts from a completely different place, and honestly, a much more fascinating one. You see, in Norse cosmology, the world isn't some paradise that we lost. Not at all. It's a system that was thrown into a constant, dramatic crisis right from the very beginning. It's a world that was flawed from the moment it was built and is always fighting a losing battle with itself. To really get a handle on this, we have to look at the architecture of this universe, its absolute center, the great cosmic ash tree, Yggdrasil. Now, Yggdrasil is the axis of everything. Its branches and roots connect all of the 9 worlds, from Asgard, the home of the gods, to the worlds of humans and the dead. But instead of being some perfect, untouchable pillar, the old texts paint a picture of a living thing that is perpetually being consumed, constantly suffering. The very foundation of existence is under attack, from the inside. Way down in the mists, there's a dragon named Nidahogg, and it is just ceaselessly chewing on one of the main roots. This isn't just a minor annoyance, it's an act of structural sabotage. The whole point is to bring the entire system crashing down. And while the foundation is getting chewed on, the canopy is literally being eaten. You've got 4 stags and a goat named Heidrun living up in the branches, just constantly grazing on the leaves. So the tree is being weakened from the top and the bottom at the same time, in this relentless, slow-motion disintegration. And this is not some peaceful, harmonious ecosystem. It is a high-stress, antagonistic environment. There's even a squirrel, Ratatoskr, whose entire job is to scurry up and down the trunk, carrying insults between an eagle at the top and the dragon at the bottom. The entire system is literally fueled by conflict. And yet, in the middle of all this decay, there is an opposing force. The oldest texts, like the Poetic Edda, describe a mechanism for preservation. It stands forever green, but, and this is the key, only because it's being actively cared for. This sets the stage for the other side of the story, the fight for order. So if the universe is constantly trying to fall apart, what's stopping it from collapsing right now? Well, the answer is constant, difficult, laborious maintenance. And this is where the Norns come in. We usually think of them as these mystical weavers of fate, but a much better way to see them based on what they actually do is as cosmic engineers. They aren't just predicting the future, they are actively maintaining the present to make sure there even is a future. They do this with a very practical daily maintenance routine. First, they draw water from the well of fate. Then, they mix it with a special white clay. Finally, they smear this mixture all over the tree, like a protective coating. Their job is to physically counteract the decay from all that gnawing and grazing. And this gives us a totally different concept of fate or weird. It's not some pre-written script you're just forced to act out. In this worldview, fate is the tangible result of all this daily work. Order doesn't just happen on its own. It's something you have to achieve, day in and day out, through a disciplined effort to keep chaos from winning. But here's the crucial point. All this heroic maintenance, it's just a temporary fix. It was never, ever meant to last forever. You know, the gods in this mythology, they aren't these all-powerful creators who made a perfect universe. The world itself was born from an act of incredible violence, the killing of the giant Ymir. It was flawed from day one. So the gods are really more like emergency responders, just constantly trying to patch up a system that they know is ultimately destined to fail. And this leads us to Ragnarok, the prophesied end. But it isn't a punishment for sin or some kind of moral judgment. It's described more like an expected mechanical failure. It kicks off with the Great Winter, which shuts down the tree's whole life cycle. Then, Yggdrasil itself shudders and groans, having finally reached its breaking point. And that's when the final cataclysm begins and the world collapses. So the big takeaway here is that Ragnarok isn't a moral judgment. It's the moment when entropy finally wins. It's the logical conclusion, is what happens when the relentless forces of decay finally overwhelm the daily labor of order. It's a matter of cosmic physics, not a failure of anyone's character. This all raises a huge question, right? If the world is doomed, if even the gods know they're going to die, then what's the point of fighting? What's the point of, well, anything? Well, this fatalistic worldview actually created a really profound shift in values. It created a pro-process mindset. If the final outcome is fixed and you can't change it, then the only thing you truly have control over is how you face it. The quality of your actions during the struggle, that becomes the entire point, not whether you achieve victory in the end. The highest ideal, which is embodied by the chief god Odin, is to know, with absolute certainty, that you are going to lose, but to fight anyway with everything you have. There's such a tragic beauty in that idea, to be doomed and yet to try. And this way of thinking led to a whole ethical system where courage, honor, and your reputation were prized above everything else. Since eternal life just wasn't in the cards, the real goal was to achieve a good name that would outlast you. Death wasn't a failure you should fear. It was an honorable transition that you prepared for. And this really brings us to the core insight of this entire worldview. Just think about it for a second. If the world were perfect and permanent, would any single action you take truly matter? It's the very fragility of the Norse cosmos that gives every single act, both human and divine, its incredible weight and its meaning. So we're left with this one final thought. Perhaps true meaning isn't found in permanence, but in the courage it takes to defend something that's both beautiful and fleeting. In a world that is constantly breaking down, every small act of repair, every attempt to hold things together for just one more day, that becomes a victory in itself.